Thanks everybody for those of you who have just logged in the last 30 seconds or so, just if you could make sure your mic is on mute for us and we'll get underway. So kia ora tātou, my name is Carl Billington. I'll be acting as our host today, so welcome to the first of our quarterly updates for 2025. We record these sessions as well, so just as you're aware, we'll make that recording available afterwards and the slides will be available through our website. We'll begin with the karakia, then we'll cover our agenda for the day. Just note, again, there'll be opportunities to interact with the speakers using the Q&A function. So I'll explain a little bit more about that after our karakia together. But welcome, thanks for joining us. He karakia. Kia tau ngā manaakitanga a te mea ngaro, ki runga ki tēnā o tātou. Kia māhia te hua, mā kihikihi, kia toi te kupu, toi te mana, toi te aroha, toi te reo Māori. Kia tūturu, kia whakamaua, kia tina, hui e, mai kia. Kia ora tātou. Thank you. So on our agenda today, we'll have an update from our Chief Executive, Sarah Gillies, who's with me here first. And then we'll catch up with the Energy Competition Task Force team with Rob and Tim. Rob is joining us online. And then the last two parts of the agenda, we'll be looking at the work that's underway to support electricity retailers implementing the consumer care obligations that have come into play and were established last year with Daniel Griffiths, and relating to that, or following on from there, we'll close with an update on the compliance pieces with Jenny. So we're going to take a slightly different approach to the Q&A. As we go through each speaker, you've got the Q&A function where, as you're listening, you can just log a question and then we'll curate those and come to those at the end of each presentation. You're also welcome to use the hand function, I think, if that's easier, but if you can, drop them into the Q&A. If we get to the end of a presentation and there just aren't any questions or hands up, we'll thank the speakers, and for the sake of just time, we'll move on to the next speaker. But at the end of the day's event, again, remember the information is recorded, will be available online, and if there's specific things you'd like us to follow up on, please feel free to get in touch. Thank you. I think that's all of the housekeeping, so appreciate you signing in, and let's get underway. Sarah, welcome. It's great to have you with us. And as I know you cover a few themes with us, but just acknowledging that this is our first update for 2025. It was a pretty full year last year, and so I thought maybe it might be nice to hear some of the reflections you have in mind as you look back on 2024 coming into 2025.
Yeah,
Kia ora, Sarah.
thanks, Carl. And hi everyone, nice to have you all here. Hard to believe that we're well into 2025 already, and it feels like we're getting a bit of a rhythm going with these quarterly updates now, so it's really good to see so many of you joining. Yeah, reflections on 2024. I mean, obviously 2024 was a pretty tough year for a lot of people, and it was a challenging year in the industry and for everybody really. I think what I take out of what happened last year is lots of lessons for all of us, for ourselves at the authority, for the industry as well. And I think the way, we obviously talked to you about the reprioritisation we did of our work following, August last year, and just thinking about kind of how we are delivering things differently from the benefit of the lessons that we had last year. We had obviously previously done a reset of our vision and our strategy, and then, used the things that we learned from last year to also work through reprioritising our work program to make sure that we're really focused on the most important things. We also benefited last year from much more engagement with you all, with consumers, with the industry, with everyone really. And we also took some deliberate steps to try and kind of open ourselves up, open our doors, have more regular engagement and a wider process for engagement. And we did a few things there. We also really, I think from last year, I heard a lot of people give us the feedback that they really wanted to see the authority stepping up and speaking out a little bit more in relation to events in the sector. Some of you will know that I did a bit of media through August last year, but I think also we want to keep going in that direction. So you'll see more from us in terms of things like security of supply, and you will have seen more communication that we've done directly to consumers about our work and our role as well. So expect more of that. So those are some of the things I guess I took out of last year in terms of how we could do things differently.
Thanks, Sarah. And so shifting then from reflections on 2024, looking ahead to the year coming ahead, what are some of the sort of key areas of focus you kind of have in mind for the authority for 2025?
Yeah, so I mean, security of supply is always top of mind, and that's something we'll talk a little bit more about. I'm also really mindful about, consumers and the impact on them of price rises, for example. We know that, all of us are aware of the coming price rises and the impact that will have on consumers, and thinking about what we can all do to help support consumers through that period. For us, we're putting consumers really front and centre of our work program. We've been talking about that for a little while, and you'll see more and more things where we are really talking directly to consumers about the things we're doing that benefit them. I think about the way that, we're all kind of passive investors in the system, but actually there's opportunities for people to be more actively involved. We really want to kind of empower people more, give consumers the option to have more choice, more kind of engagement themselves. And we, for example, we put out the information or proposals under the Task Force Package 2, which speak to some of the things that consumers can kind of, how they can benefit more. So that's the sort of thing that I guess is top of mind right now.
Thanks, Sarah. And so with those themes in mind, let's narrow our frame maybe to the immediate sort of next 6-month period.
Yeah, sure.
How does that translate into some key activities people might see from the authority over the immediate 6 months?
Yeah, I've got quite a long list, and this won't even cover all of it. But I said security of supply is really important. We're working with the sector to make sure that we are monitoring what's going on, we're communicating what's happening, and we understand the steps that participants are taking to prepare. So that's part of it. I think I mentioned affordability challenges and the potential or the increasing prices. So again, quite a bit of work in that space. What you will see is us, one of our core roles as a regulator is monitoring. So requesting information, digging into that information and understanding what's happening. That is something we've spent a bit of time talking about in the last little while in terms of expanding our retail monitoring in particular. And that goes hand in hand with some of the things we've done, like bringing in the consumer care obligations. Daniel's going to talk a bit about that in this session as well. And that also kind of speaks to, there's a flow on there into compliance as well, and Ginny's going to give you an update there. I've mentioned monitoring in terms of security of supply, but also in terms of price increases. And just, more generally, that helps inform the work that we do as well. We have got a sort of priority work program that's published, but I think that only goes out to March, and we are updating that. I have had feedback from people that they really want to understand what's coming, and we are right in the middle of kind of updating those sorts of things to be able to communicate more about our forward work program. I know that's really important to all of you, particularly people who are trying to plan their kind of, what things they need to watch out for and get involved with. So absolutely understand that, and we are committed to doing that.
Thanks, Sarah. And again, really full dance card in a short period. With all the change and pace that's underway, not just for the authority, but everyone, I thought it'd be interesting if you got any reflections on just the pace of change that we're kind of all experiencing.
Yeah. For sure, when I look back at when I first joined the authority, we are doing materially more work than we were then, and that probably felt busy as well. I think, the pace of change is something that, for me, is a lot driven by the environment that we're in, what's going on around us, and things are changing in terms of consumers and the industry. So the pace of regulation has to be kind of keeping up or matching that. Some of you will say that the pace of change is not fast enough. and others of you will tell me that we are moving too quickly and we're rushing. My goal is to make sure that we are balancing the need to move quickly on the things that matter and need to be dealt with quickly, while making sure we still do, the right proper process that we need to do to get good regulatory measures in place. So that's always going to be a balance. It's not always going to suit everybody. But I want to thank you for your involvement and engagement in a lot of the consultations that we've had over the last little while. I hear you when you say that it is a lot to read and engage with. One of the things we're trying to do to help you with that is to try different ways of engaging. So we've been telling people, you don't have to write a massive submission. You can provide that in other ways, verbally, or filling out a more kind of a shorter form kind of document as well. So I understand that there's a lot of work involved in all of that. Really grateful for your engagement, involvement, and the feedback that you give us. And just, thank you for helping us with the very important work that we are doing for all of you and on behalf of consumers.
Kia ora, Sarah. Sarah, I don't have any questions logged in the Q&A for you, so I'm going to let you out of the spotlight for the moment.
Alrighty.
But as always, really appreciate having you with us. And if others have more questions for you, log them in. And as we're doing these regularly in other forums, as Sarah said, we'll attend to those. So really happy to engage and follow.
I think most of you know where to find me.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah.
Cool. Thanks.
Let's move now to catch up on the Energy Competition Task Force. So we're joined by Rob Bernot, our program lead online. Thank you, Rob. Kia ora. And I'm joined in the room by Tim Sparks, our GM for Networks and System Change. So kia ora, Rob. Kia ora, Tim. Lovely to have you both with us. The floor is yours.
Kia ora, Carl. Thanks for your introduction. Kia ora tātou. Appreciate having so many people on this call. Really do appreciate the time you're giving to listen to these updates. I know everyone has a very busy dance card at the moment. There's been a lot happening with the task force work since the last quarterly update we did. We've moved into a different phase with the work now, rather than doing that preliminary policy thinking. We really are in engagement mode now. We are talking to you on a range of different fronts, and we're doing things, and it's great to be out hearing views, engaging with people, talking, getting that input. And I couldn't emphasize more the point Sarah was making, that we really do appreciate the feedback that you are providing to us. It's super important in terms of how we manage to shape these initiatives up well and test them and ensure that they will actually provide the long-term benefit to consumers that we are intending them to provide. So we really do invite that feedback, and again, just completely endorse that comment of we are open to different modes of engaging. We are open to finding ways to ensure we hear you that aren't necessarily the traditional long submissions at 20 paces approach. So really open to conversations about that. So what we've done specifically this year is we have released the PPA's working paper in January. That is open for submissions at the moment, closing at the end of the month. The standardised flexibility product, that was an industry co-developed initiative, but sits kind of underneath the MDAG recommendations and then the task force work program as well. That started trading at the end of January, which was great to see, and it's had its second trading event with another one scheduled for later this month. I've also released 3 papers in relation to those consumer-facing initiatives in package 2 of the task force work program, essentially aiming to give consumers more options, more ability to control their use of and cost of electricity, particularly recognising the benefit that consumer action can have to the system in various different ways. So we're really excited to have those papers out and in the market, and starting to talk to you about what your response to them is. And it's been great to hear some of the commentary already coming back on that. We're going to talk through each of those a little bit more in this presentation. But first instance, I'm going to hand over to Tim, who is leading the work on those consumer-facing initiatives, and he can talk through a little bit more where that's at, what it's trying to achieve, and what the next steps are.
Kia ora, Rob. Thanks, Rob. Kia ora tātou. Look, as you'll be aware, earlier this month we released these 3 task force initiatives designed to give consumers more control over their electricity use and costs. One of these relates to time of use pricing plans. The other two relate to how people are rewarded for injecting electricity when it's needed. And all three are about easing pressure on the electricity system and keeping overall system costs to a minimum. I'm conscious many of you have tuned into our launch earlier in the month, so you will have heard a bit about these proposals already. So we'll keep it brief and perhaps just give a bit of a quick recap on what we're proposing. I might start with number 3 there. Alongside the task force papers, we released an issues paper on the distributed generation pricing principles. This raises issues around the incremental cost pricing rule in Part 6 of the Code, which we have heard may prevent distributors from efficiently planning for future connections. This is not a task force initiative, but we've chosen to release it at the same time as the 2A, 2B and 2C initiatives because it's on a related subject, and we thought it was useful for interested parties to understand the authority's thinking on the DGPPs at the same time as considering the task force proposals. So we're certainly considering submissions on that as well. Perhaps just moving back to task force initiative 2A, requiring distributors to pay consumers who inject at peak times. Quick recap of our proposal there. We're proposing to require distributors to pay rebates that would reward injection from mass market consumers where that benefits the network. And to guide distributors in doing this, we've proposed principles in the code that would require distributors to identify the parts of their network that would benefit from injection from distributed generation, would ease the pressure on the network. And we've proposed that distributors would provide in their pricing methodology for rebates to be paid for that injection. And we believe this will encourage consumers to invest in batteries and supply electricity in times and places where it will help reduce pressure on the network and ultimately help lower power prices for all of us. Perhaps turning to the retail pricing proposals there. So we've got a combined proposal there for initiatives 2B and 2C, which relate to time-varying retail pricing for electricity consumption and supply. We've addressed those in a single consultation paper. Our preferred proposal option here is to address both problems in a combined 4-part proposal. So number 1, require the larger retailers to make at least one time-varying consumption plan available to all mass market customers, and at least one plan with a time-varying buyback rate. Point 2, require those retailers to provide to promote their time-varying price plans so that they're visible to consumers. Point 3, we're creating a reporting and monitoring regime to track progress on that. And point 4, alongside that, we're also proposing some changes to the way retailers are billed by distributors, which we think will also sharpen the incentives on retailers. So we think our proposals there will allow consumers better access to ready options for price plans that reward them for shifting their consumption and their injection. That will promote consumer choice and also give consumers greater ability to control their energy costs. And we think our proposals will have broader benefits in terms of reducing New Zealand's energy system costs and ultimately reducing their power bills. So perhaps turning to the next slide. Submissions are due to close on those 3 papers 26th of March. We'll have cross submissions open until the 16th of April. 3 ways to provide feedback. Of course, you can make a written submission, email those through to the task force inbox. For an easier way to provide feedback, we've got a survey designed for consumers and consumer reps on the website. And our consultation webpage has a good overview of proposals and issues, which you can have a read before you fill in the survey. And finally, we're open to verbal submissions, so get in touch if that's how you'd like to provide your feedback. So anything you'd like to discuss, please don't hesitate to get in touch. And I believe I'm handing back to Rob now.
Go to Rob.
Thanks, Tim. Can we go to the next slide, please? So I just wanted to briefly touch on the Standardised Flexibility Product Initiative, which obviously has now been rolled out as a super peak hedge contract, and trading in that has just started. So we've had 2 trading events. I think we're encouraged by how those trading events have gone, bearing in mind that it's very early days. Volume was traded, both buyers and sellers were on the platform making bids and offers and ultimately concluding those trades. There's records on the Electricity Authority's EMI site, which shows exactly what did and didn't go on in those auctions in terms of bids and offers and concluded trades, and we think that transparency, obviously anonymised, is really important in terms of people better understanding the price of flexibility and looking to get various different inputs to develop that forward curve for shape to go alongside the baseload forward curve that sits from the ASX market making function. So far so good, but it's very, very early days. There's no question from our perspective, both in terms of the curve and in terms of better understanding both the supplier and the buyer perspectives on this, and continued participation is really important in this. This is part of the reason why we prioritised a industry design solution as opposed to a regulated type solution, is that it was intended to be something that the suppliers were happy to trade and the buyers wanted to buy. And I really appreciate the process that the co-design group went through in terms of trying to make sure that not just the product, but that also the process for trading was something that would work and be practical and be useful. So once again, huge appreciation to that co-design group. We are looking at this really closely. We will monitor and keep monitoring and ask questions. We're very open to feedback. If anyone has any particular feedback on the process, what's working, what's not working, we do love to hear the good feedback as well as the this could be different feedback. But look, at this point in time, we're pleased with the start, and we now need to see where that goes to, because 2 trading sessions is not the answer. It's just the beginning, and there's a significant process to go from here. Can we go to the next slide, please? The other thing I wanted to briefly discuss with you was the Power Purchase Agreements Initiative. As those who follow this will recall, this was published from the task force in September in terms of investigation requiring gentailers to offer firming for power purchase agreements. And the concept of this was that that same flexible generation that backs the standardised hedge product, there may be a more specific use for that the standardised flex product might not cover for entrant generators, where they're looking to sign up power purchase agreements, and to do that they need the firming, and the power purchase agreements are important because that then gives them a continuous revenue stream which allows them to secure construction finance for the new generation. So that's the logic that sits behind this. And we all know that there is that really significant challenge of getting more supply into the system and getting more competition on that supply side. So the outcome we're trying to achieve, the more supply, more competition in supply, we are completely steadfast in that. What is up for discussion and what the working paper was seeking to ventilate was that question of, is requiring supply of firming the right thing to do? Is it the thing that's going to stimulate that PPA market, stimulate that generation entry in the way that we want, or are there other things going on? Are there other headwinds that we need to think about? Are there other actions the authority could take that are either more urgent or more important in terms of achieving that long-term outcome? So the paper covers a lot of ground and is intending to go through both the dynamics of the market and some of the things that might or might not cause people to enter, and also covers a lot of possible options, things you could do that might have a positive impact on stimulating that PPA market. We had a webinar where we talked through the paper and had a few questions earlier this week. We are open to questions. We remain open to discussion. The fact that it's getting near the end of the consultation period should not stop anyone from picking up the phone. We're really keen to hear from you on this. We've put a lot out there, and we would value the sector's input and the input of anyone impacted on this, including non-traditional people who don't normally get involved in these sector consultations to better understand what the most useful thing is that we can do. So really looking forward to getting the feedback on that and to working out what the most useful thing that can be done is. Submissions close at the end of the month, and we expect to remain on track in terms of our published task force timeline to then bring something back out to you in April. That was all I was planning on covering from a task force perspective. Like I say, we've moved into production mode. We're really pleased to be out in the market. We're really pleased to be hitting the expectations that we've previously set with you, so that you can have your resources planned and you can start looking at the various things that we're putting in front of you.
Kia ora, Rob. Kia ora, Tim. And on that theme of feedback and questions, we have both a feedback piece and a comment and a question, particularly for you, Tim. The comment is from Neil. Kia ora, Neil. And it's really good to see the trade press picking up on how important the task force initiatives, the package 2 work is. And Neil's added that it really deserves that level of attention, so that's encouraging. The question is, and I appreciate in its early days, Neil's interested in any feedback we're currently getting on the implementation timeframe. So specifically, are we getting an indication that distributors are comfortable with the proposed implementation timeframes, or any sense of the timeframe aspect at the moment?
I haven't heard any feedback specifically on that yet, but very keen to hear from distributors and from retailers about the implementation timeframes.
Tim. Oh, kia ora, Neil. Appreciate that. Oh, sorry, Rob.
I might comment on that really briefly. So I actually opened up an email today that was a piece of feedback on implementation timelines around this, and I won't go into the email except to say really appreciated seeing it, and that people were coming back to us saying this is what we think and why. We are super conscious that getting the policy right, getting the code right is just part of the job on all of these initiatives, and that if it's not then implemented well, and that there's that really core balance of we do not want to be slow if these things are worth doing. We want to get them in place quickly, and we're very unapologetic for that, but also we want to get it in place right, and we don't want to have something that was a great idea implemented poorly that we all end up regressing in 5 years' time and just undoing. So if it's comfort to people, the internal conversations at the Electricity Authority absolutely do have implementation in our headlights, and we are very, very aware of the importance of that. And if we get to a point where we've got something that we think is a great piece of policy to go forward with, we're recommending a decision to the board, and we're still not sure about what the best way to implement is, or whether there's some hooks that we haven't got, we will proactively talk to people. We are aware that's our job. We need to make sure this stuff is done well.
Kia ora, Rob. Thank you. And we've just had an additional question from Marianne. Kia ora, Marianne, that notes that the ECTF program on the website lists papers to come on initiatives 1C and D, and is querying when we expect to see these papers. I don't know if there's anything you can indicate yet, Rob, but just a query on the 1C and D papers.
Cool, Carl. Marianne's exact question is this still on track? The answer is yes.
Awesome. Kia ora, Rob, and kia ora, Marianne. Thank you. Rob and Tim, that's all we have in the Q&A for now. Appreciate you joining us, Tim. Rob, appreciate you signing in online. And again, as both Rob and Tim have indicated, this is a live dialogue with multiple channels, so please engage with us in whatever way is easiest for you. Thank you both.
Thanks, Carl.
Thanks, Carl.
Daniel. So moving now to the topic of retail pricing. Some of you will be aware of this has been quite a bit of activity in the space, and so Daniel Griffiths is our manager policy in the retail and consumer space, and we'll hear from Daniel around, I guess we're going to talk a little bit about how we're avoiding price shocks, some of the expectations around communication. So Daniel, it's great to have you with us. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Carl, and kia ora koutou. For those who sharp, eagle-eyed people on the earlier slides, Jimmy is going to be picking up some of the key talking points about the consumer care obligations, which I'm really excited to see coming through for 1 April. And I do touch on some of those, but very keen to talk through some of the work we're doing around the retail pricing and our recent guidelines for communicating price change. So you would have heard Sarah earlier talking about the authority's commitment to put consumers at the front and centre of our ambitious and deliberate reform package. So there's quite a lot going on. At the same time, our electricity market is changing. It's due to a number of factors, and the changes will increasingly empower and enable electricity consumers to become active players. Just heard Tim talk about some of the task force work. So soon, by making some of those active choices about when and how we consume and supply energy, we'll be rewarded for the choices that will benefit the whole system. So those who are able to invest in things like rooftop solar and batteries will be important contributors to a sustainable and dynamic electricity system. So quite exciting times. However, there are some headwinds, and we know that the market and consumers are facing some increasing costs. So electricity prices are expected to increase this year. We've got the increases with revenue limits for Transpower and for local lines companies increasing. And these are applying from 1 April. In the first year of these increases, these are forecast to lead to average household electricity bills increasing by about $10 a month. But we're also seeing some large regional, or expecting to see some large regional variation there as well. Urban areas will see more aligned with the average, but some rural areas might see increases of potentially up to $25 a month. So these prospective industry price changes come at a time when affordability is already a pressing concern for a lot of New Zealanders, and particularly our most vulnerable consumers as well. So it's critical that we as a sector do what we can to mitigate the significant impact that these will have on New Zealand electricity consumers. Retailers and distributors in particular need to carefully consider the impact of these price rises and to be taking all practicable steps to minimise these. So we've recently done the work on our guidelines, and this sort of sets out our expectations around pricing, but equally we've just introduced, we've seen the first couple of obligations under our consumer care obligations come into effect on 1 January, and we have the remaining coming into effect on the 1st of April as well. So we introduced the obligations to ensure retailers provide meaningful support to customers, particularly those facing financial hardship. And part of this is also making sure that retailers and distributors provide timely, transparent and trustworthy communication regarding any price change, which is where we come in with our guidelines for communicating price change. So to support that overall communication to consumers and to ensure that retailers and distributors play their critical role, we've updated the guidelines for communicating price changes. And this resets our expectations around how distributors and retailers communicate the changes to their consumers and to the public. So the authority encourages and wants to support retailers and distributors to adopt effective communication practices, particularly those that will help consumers understand their electricity pricing, will empower consumers to make informed choices, and to ensure that consumers are made aware of the price changes early, and particularly early enough to explore options and support, including those that might be available under our consumer care obligations. And the revised guidelines emphasise the empathy and proactive support and communications, using plain language, and also those practical supports, such as relevant information also about our retailers' consumer care policy. So I'll turn now to some of the principles that we've got within the guidelines. So firstly, the first key principle: provide timely, transparent and reliable communication. And what this means is that we want to see consumers receive clear, accessible explanation for any price changes, including any tariff breakdowns and the impact on household bills, and in particular, or especially, no later than 30 days before the price changes come into effect. Equally, we want to ensure that consumers understand how transmission and the distribution charges are contributing to those overall increases or in any price adjustments. The second guideline principle is to demonstrate empathy and proactive support in communications. So retailers should demonstrate a customer-centred approach when communicating price changes. I already mentioned the importance of plain language in all communication, and importantly understanding unnecessary technical jargon, which I know as a sector we do tend to love. And this also includes highlighting those available support measures, particularly for those consumers who may be experiencing or expected to experience payment difficulties in line with our consumer care obligations and those consumer care policies that the retailers do have in place. The last principle that I want to talk to is to be accurate and consistent in public statements. It's really important that we communicate coherently and effectively as a sector. And to this end, what we want to see is retailers and distributors ensuring that their messaging is consistent to prevent any conflicting or misleading information. So this could include also sharing information where practicable and appropriate, of course, on any potential public statements that they're making. We've already had some good feedback from the Commerce Commission, who I know their plain English material they have on their website has been picked up by a couple of retailers and distributors as well. So it's really good to see the sector working together to get some good communications out to consumers so that they're aware of what's going on. You've heard a lot already about the where the authority is looking to increase its monitoring, and the retail sector is exactly the same. So we're increasing our monitoring of the retail sector. We have requested information from retailers about how they're planning to communicate to their customers around the likely changes that are coming in from 1 April. And this will inform us about how retailers are meeting expectations around the guidelines to protect consumer interests. So we have used our powers under Section 46 of the Act to receive advance notifications of planned price increases or any planned price changes. We will also be looking to monitor the actual price changes as they come through, and also to receive any information about how retailers are offering support for their consumers to understand and to prepare for those potential impacts in practical ways. And we've had some very good feedback so far on that already through that guideline. So importantly, this is about us seeking to better understand the impact of the flow through of distribution and transmission charges on consumers, and to see what consumer outcomes are looking like, and also to ensure that these are being communicated in a clear and timely fashion. So just again, to thank you to those who have provided that very valuable information for us. And this is obviously just the first one of a series of monitoring as we get going. So, and this monitoring will enable us to really look at those consumer outcomes and check for consistency and pricing communications across the regions. So, just to sort of sum up, where proactive and decisive steps are needed by all of us to meet the expectations of New Zealand consumers, both large and small, this year. We have set some clear expectations about for both retailers and distributors about how they should be informing their customers and the wider communications around price changes. I think this will benefit us all that with this increased transparency and also our strengthening monitoring that we're likely to reduce the potential for any price shock for consumers. And I think this is how we can really ensure that all New Zealanders are informed, supported and empowered through the change that we're seeing in 2025.
Sure. We have a question, and I'm not sure how close to the detail of this you are, so apologies, and if not, we'll follow up. From Richard. Kia ora, Richard. With the price rises in mind, Richard asked if there's any updates on the proposal to empower consumer switching with a stronger comparison service. I don't know if you can speak to that piece of work or not.
So certainly. So as part of our wider consumer mobility work, the authority has been undertaking a number of pieces of work. One of those has been to procure an updated and improved switching service. So that is currently going through its procurement stages, and given the sort of where we are in the stages, I can't comment more on that. Sure. But it's certainly our intention to be having that in place in the middle of this year. Yeah. And there's a wider package of other supporting work that we said as part of the how we're going to enhance the consumer experience in this updated service that we'll be consulting on shortly.
Nice, Daniel. So we'll keep watching that space. Kia ora, Daniel. Thank you for your time. Kia ora, Richard, for the question. Thank you very much.
Sure.
And I'm joined next by Ginny, who is our Manager of Consumer Compliance and Projects. Kia ora, Ginny. Great to have you with us, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Kia ora, Carl. Thank you for that. Kia ora koutou. I'm Ginny Murray, and I'm the Manager for Consumer Compliance and Projects here at the Authority. So previously in these updates, I have provided an overview of the education program, what was delivered and what is coming up in relation to the to compliance education. But this time round, what I'll do is I'll start off with explaining that we've recently split the compliance team into two. So Peter Kirk, who some of you may know, he is now our compliance operations manager. So he looks after the investigations team and they deal obviously with code breaches. Meanwhile, I've been busy setting up the consumer compliance and projects team, and so I primarily look after the compliance education program, but also now I look after compliance relating to consumer care obligations. So in terms of the education program, we've been busy writing guidance and case studies, and these are available on our website to read. In the latter part of 2024, we also provided training to our auditors. That was around the new audit portal that we set up. In November, we also ran a registry manager user course in Auckland. This was well attended by a lot of people across the country, which was great to see. It had been a few years since we had run that, so it was good to see a good uptake with that. And then in December, we also ran the first of a consumer care obligation webinar to discuss the obligations, obviously around the discuss the obligations that came into effect on the 1st of January. So in terms of what we've got coming up, first cab off the ranks is a webinar that the policy team is doing next week, and that is on changes to distributed generation information in the electricity registry. That's being held next week, and if you are interested in that, do head to our website and sign up for it. We've also got our second webinar around the consumer care obligations, and that is on the 20th of March. And then after that, we're looking at hosting a forum for the auditors again in May. And then following on from that, we'll actually run another set of registry manager user courses. So you can see there that we'll be holding one in Christchurch in May for a couple of days, and again in Wellington in June for a couple of days. We will put out more information around those registry manager user courses, but if you are interested in the meantime, you're welcome to email us at consumercompliance@ea.govt.nz. I have obviously talked about the registry manager user courses in previous quarterly update meetings, but just to recap, those courses will again be held as a 2-day course, and they're designed for beginner participants in the electricity industry, but they're also good for individuals who wish to gain a high level of understanding of how the industry works. It covers fundamental concepts and principles relating to the industry processes and operational practice and regulation. Training scenarios have been developed by the registry manager and the authority, and these allow for an interactive and engaging learning experience where real industry scenarios can be analysed and discussed in the context of the course material. The trainers also aim to address specific cases or problems, and attendees can gain practical insights and solutions that can be directly applied to their work or interests in the electricity industry. Places will be limited, so we do urge interested people to do register, and as I've said, if you do want to attend, email me at consumercompliance with the email address there on the slide. But we will also send out some information in the next week or so on our website and in our weekly news. So moving on to case studies, some of the feedback that we did receive last year was a desire for case studies to be published. On the slide, you can see case studies that have been recently published on our website and also noting what is coming up. We also highlight them again to the industry through our market brief and website news when these are published and put online. Another thing we're adding and doing moving forward is having a group of the 3 investigators running a webinar together on their published case studies where they discuss their case studies a bit more in depth. And it also includes an opportunity for the industry to ask any further questions. We're starting to look at doing that in April. We do have a date pinned down, so keep an eye out for the information again that we will send out in the next few weeks about that. Moving on to guidance. So we're also focusing on updating our guidance or developing new guidance for the industry. You can see that we've recently provided guidance on the new audit portal and on saves and win-backs. I've noted more publications that we are planning to publish shortly. But if there's any particular guidance that you think you want to see either written or updated, please let me know. Again, just email me at that address I've shown you on the previous slide. Also do note that we are updating our retailer guidance on the consumer care obligations, and we are looking at releasing this to the industry in March for you, so well ahead of the 1st April key date for consumer care obligations. So in terms of consumer care obligations, as you can imagine, that we have been pretty busy with that across the authority, with the final key obligations coming into effect on the 1st of April. So aside from the policy team working on updating their retailer guidance for the industry, we've also been working on setting up my new team to obviously look after the consumer care obligations. And so we'll be looking at it from obviously a compliance point of view. Late last year, we launched a page on our website that provides answers to frequently asked questions, what it means if the obligations are breached, including a dedicated customer concern form. We've also set up an 0800 number for consumers and also an email address for both retailers and the consumer to contact us if they've got any questions or concerns about the consumer care obligations. As I mentioned before, we are running a further webinar for the industry on the 20th of March. So mark that in your diaries now. We will provide a clear overview of the consumer care obligations, what is required, and how retailers and distributors can ensure compliance. We'll discuss key requirements and answer any questions that you have for us during that webinar. We'll also provide an opportunity for you to email us ahead of time if you've got some questions in mind that we can obviously have a look at preparing some answers for you. But we will send out more details around this in our market brief and website news within the next week or two. So that's pretty much it. There's a quick update on what we've been doing around compliance and consumer care. Yeah, we have been busy. And what's happening with our new team and what is in the pipeline for the industry around compliance education. So as I keep saying, if you do want to get in touch with me, do just email us at consumercompliance@ea.govt.nz. But I'll just check, are there any other questions that have come through?
Nothing else that's come in, Ginny, so yeah, really appreciate that. And as Ginny's indicated, you got mechanisms to get in touch directly with the team. So if there's anything you want to follow up on, please do that. But
Yeah.
Ginny, again, appreciate your time.
Yeah, if you do have questions, always keen to hear from people. So thank you.
Kia ora, Ginny. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
So that brings us to the end of our time together today. So again, we've recorded the webinar. It will be made available as soon as the recording's processed on our site, along with the accompanying slides. And we've had that recurring theme from Sarah and Rob and Tim, Daniel and Ginny. We just really value the dialogue and conversation. We're trying to make as many channels available to engage with us. So encourage you to take that opportunity. But for now, thank you for your time. Let's close with karakia together, and then we'll return to our day. So, karakia whakakapi. Kia whakairia te tapu. Kia wātia ai te ara. Kia tūriki whakataha ai. Kia tūriki whakataha ai. Haumie, huie, taiki e. Kia ora tātou, stay well.